Hello, everyone. So my name is Elijah Sumners. I'm here, and you're going to be your moderator today for this panel. I'm going to pass down the mic, and everyone can just introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I am Candace Durham. I am the co-founder and CEO of the B Suite.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Lloyd. I am co-founder of a smart city tech startup called Ascendex.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Brown, and I am the Director of Operations and Senior HR Consultant at Integrative Inquiry.
Thank you all. I'm really excited about this. Well, let's start off really simply. Can you define high performing for me? And is it measurable or quantifiable, or is it intangible?
I think it's a little bit of both, or a lot of bit of both, honestly. I would define high performing as someone both capable, willing, able, and excited in a way to do the work that they are experts in. I'm going to go with that.
Absolutely, I would agree. It is both. You feel it when you walk into a room and you witness a high performing team. You can just see it, right? Everyone's kind of building off of each other ideas, right? Something starts small and it ends up big and elaborate by the time they get through tossing it around. It's tangible because you see the results. Harvard Business Review shared a stat that companies with high performing teams, see a revenue increase of at least 10%. So it is definitely both.
I would definitely have to agree with that. When I think of high performing teams, I automatically think of culture. It is the culture that allows them to be high performing, as well as it is quantifiable and it is tangible, but you have to put in the work to make that happen. And I also think, depending on the type of business, your high performance may be different from others, but ultimately some of the components of high performing, they're similar. And I definitely think it's willingness to learn, adaptability, being able to partner with one another, collaborating with each other, and ultimately respecting each other too. I think that's something that oftentimes in the work environments, folks are so focused on doing the work that they forget about the people doing the work. And it's the fact that you worry about the people is what makes it a high performing team, because you don't forget about the individuals who are doing the work for you.
Just to piggyback off your last comment about culture, so how do you foster that culture within where you work and make sure that everyone feels that, not pressure, but that knowing that there is excellence that is at the end of this?
Yeah, I think for me, there's two things that come to mind. I fail in front of my team. I fail quickly. I fail hard. That's my team. For the folks at home, that's my team. Every leader fails, right? And I think it's important when you have a team and you're trying to build a culture and trying to build, norms around feedback. I don't like the word norms, but norms around feedback and support, that you have to show that you also need it, that you need support, that you're still growing, that you're still learning. So folks feel comfortable, coming to you to get that support, to build that relationship. That's how you build trust, right? And trust is a key component of culture, I feel. And building on that, it's important to be the most authentic and transparent version of yourself as possible. It's not always possible to be 100% authentic. We know that. We had conversations yesterday about racism in the workplace and white supremacist culture that impacts our ability to really show up fully as our most authentic selves. But as much as you can, do it, right? Once what you're putting out there is what you're going to receive. And when I am my most authentic self, I get that from my team. And that is how we build our relationships and our culture with each other.
We have to put her last because we will not have anything to talk about. Ditto to everything that you said. I believe at the end of the day that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so you got to have a strong culture in place. My background, so I was a captain in the Army. I've worked for Fortune 100, so Walmart, it never stops those operations. And I ran a $500 million operations for them, so stores all across of Georgia, actually, and moved up to global operations. And I can tell you that in all of those arenas, what carried me, what allowed me to be successful was the first thing that I would do was attack the culture, the heart of the team, right? And if there were people who I felt did not align with the culture that I wanted on my team, I did not waste time removing that person. I don't care if they were the highest producing, it doesn't matter because I need, 12 people to produce, not one person. And so for me, and I would tell my leaders, you have to protect the culture within your team. And that's just number one. That's one of those things that were just, it was a non-negotiable for me. And so if you put a culture in place, you then have to fight tirelessly to keep that culture in place. And when you do that, that's when the high performing piece comes. That's when people feel comfortable showing up as them, as their true authentic selves. If I don't have to put effort towards putting on a mask and I could just get straight to work, like that energy, I'm now taking all that energy of putting up that farce, I'm putting it towards giving you results. And so that's why it's also, to your point, the importance of allowing people to bring their whole selves to work.
Um, Definitely ditto with that. When I think of culture, I think of psychological safety, right? So, do I feel safe enough in the team that I'm in? Do I feel safe enough in the organization that I am? Can I challenge you? Can I say that I don't like something? Is it okay that I disagree? Am I respected for my contributions on this team? Those are the things when I think of culture and psychological safety, like you embed that in your policies and your practices. You build that into your structure because otherwise you're going to have different varieties of different types of culture. So you have your organizational culture and then you have your team cultures. But if you do that at the highest level, and it starts with leadership first. So as Candace said, failing in front of her team, that's transparency. I'm not perfect and I will never be perfect. And I'm not even asking my team to be perfect. But I'm asking you to own what you do. I'm asking you to advocate for yourself. I'm asking you to ask me for help. I'm asking you to call me out too. That is to me how you build high performing teams. You have just as much power here as I do. How do we analyze the power dynamics in our departments and our teams? That is how you build those high performing cultures and teams to me.
Y'all hiring? Like, I just feel like you guys being in charge would just be fantastic. I just love how you're answering these questions. For the next thing, I think I want to ask you is about team building. So when you have your team already, do you encourage like team building exercises? Or are you just throwing them into the thing? Because it sounds like you restructure the power dynamic in your team, so it's not like a hierarchy, maybe it's more circular. So I'm just curious about team building and how do you measure?
I think it depends a little bit on what it is that I'm leading, right? So I run two different companies right now, and we're structured very differently. And I come from a nonprofit background where the structure is completely different, right? The hierarchy existed. I was just a part of it, and I had my team underneath me. So things were a little bit more structured, and also there was structure I had to follow. Now that I'm the boss, I was going to do quotes, but no, I'm the boss. Now that I'm the boss, I get to, right? Thank you. I get to determine, what that structure looks like for me. And I am not a hierarchical person. Like, I don't fit within that, which is why I work for myself now. It was not, right for me. And one thing that I tell my team, and I hope they're watching, I'm looking at you, that you have more power than you know. Um, you are here for a reason. We hired you for a reason. You're in the role that you're in for a reason. I want you to own it, right? Your responsibilities are your responsibilities. I'm really clear about what those are, but you have a lot of power in that work. We work in a client facing setting. And I have folks on my team that work directly with clients. My job is to be completely removed from that. And my goal is to be completely removed from that by the beginning of next year. And I want my team to know that you can show up the way you need to show up, right? You can hold our clients accountable. That's your job. It's not just my job, right? We own this together. You have that power to call them out and say, nah, girl, that was racist. We're not doing that, right? You have the power to say, I don't know that this relationship is working, right? And I forgot the question, I'm not gonna lie, but I was going somewhere with this, and I'm gonna end right there.
I believe the question was around team building, what type of exercises.
Yeah, I went on a tangent, my bad.
But it was a good tangent, and we're here for it. We're here for it. One of my tried and true exercises that I do with my team, it's when you get out of that honeymoon phase, right? The norming, storming, performing. So when we start storming, right, that's when you see everyone's representative comes down and their true selves show up, and you're like, wow, this is you. When no team can escape that. That is just how teams come together. And so when you get into that storming moment, or sometimes it feels like forever, have your toolkit ready, have things as a leader, have things in place ready to deploy to help just kind of still the waters a bit. And so one of my tried and true things is we do this, I call it it's a life journey. And so I'll do a graph, which is kind of like, X, Y, and we tell stories. And each week a person goes and it's their turn to tell their story. And you show up, and on a whiteboard, you just see a series of ups and downs, and maybe it's straight, and the person starts telling their life story. And in that, you understand why people may react a certain way when you do things, right? You now understand why, people behave in certain matters. So in doing that, you start humanizing people. Because we get away from that, right? We see people as means to an end, not as human beings. And when you know someone's story, even if you don't like them, you're like, but I understand you, I get you. And over time, that empathy, right, becomes a bridge. And so that is one of my go-tos. And I always start first, right? Because if I'm in charge, if I'm leading, I need to first, it goes back to what you said, that transparency, being open, being authentic. And, and if for me, I'm not going to just give you the front cover news of Tracy, right? I'm going to give you some true things that have happened to me that has shaped me and why I show up the way that I do. So, and in doing so, it allows other people to come up and be real authentic when it's their turn.
That was great. So I definitely agree with that too. When I think of team building, it's for the purpose of bringing each other together. As Tracy stated, it's so easy to think of people as a means to an end. Like you're just doing a job, but they're people. And they have a story that brought them here, and I have a story that brought me there. And I think that it's so important to build those moments into the work that you do so that we're able to get to know one each other. So when we are in storming and we are in conflict, at the bare minimum, I can say, you're still a human being. You're still a person. I may not have liked what you said, but I also know, because we have built a rapport, that you may be going through something. And so therefore, I have more empathy for you. That does not mean that I do not respect my boundaries in the process of that, but I have more empathy for you. Instead of just looking at you as a task, I'm looking at you as a human being. And it's taking those moments and building that in. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of times as a leader, it doesn't feel like I even have time to do that. But you make that time. You make that time to build those authentic connections, to get to know one another. Otherwise, we're just showing up doing whatever, And if we're going to be honest, my wife will tell you, she's in the audience, I probably spend more time working than anything else. And I feel like because I'm in those environments, it's important that I set those boundaries. It's important that the people that I surround myself with, that I'm authentic with them and they're authentic with me, because I could be spending time with my family, but I'm doing this work because it's important to me. So make those times to do the team building activities. And I love something. Even with my team, I'll start all of our meetings off with some type of playful question or something, so that although it may not be 2 to 3 hours of an activity, we are spending 15, 20 minutes to talk about something. Like, one of my favorite questions that I ask sometimes is, if you were a superhero, who would it be and why? Because that allows me to know, how do you see yourself? And does it align with the superpower that I think you have on my team? And if it doesn't, why not? And if it's something I've never heard of, why is that? Let's cultivate that. But it's taking the time to give them the space so that I can learn them. And that is so important to me in leadership, is that you actually take the time to get to know your team. They're not a function to you, they're a person. So yes, about team building. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you. That was great. About that humanizing piece and making sure everyone feels included and heard. Really, how do you? Oh, almost forgot my question. I'm so sorry. What strategies do you employ to make sure that your team members do feel valued?
I'll let you speak first.
You don't let me speak first? Okay. I'm a creature of habit. You threw me off. No. I would say, to keep my team feeling valued, uh, it goes back to what you shared about time. Um, and you see this if you've been in a job and you feel like you don't get time or you're rushed, or even if you have children, when you don't give your children time, in how they just kind of shut down. And so for me, it's giving time. And my husband's in the audience, and he could tell you I am not the most patient person. I am not. And I am a very, like, let's knock it down, move to the next thing. Come on, come on, come on. Ready, aim, fire. Let's go. And I had to, an area of opportunity for me was learning to just be still, right? Be still and be present in the moment. Don't let me put a touch base, but half of my touch base, I'm answering fires, right? Because there's always going to be something going on. And so I would make sure I would turn my computer off, make sure my phone is on vibrate, turn it over so that there's no distractions. So in that touch base, that person's time is truly their time. And I think that's the biggest thing that you can do, is show that you care, is by time, right? Because time, no matter how much money you have, time is the one thing you can never get back. When it's spent, it's spent. And so if you are giving people true, genuine, time that where there's zero distractions, I think that's probably one of the best things you can do as a leader. Which way are we going?
It's up to you. Okay. So, when I think about inclusivity, right, it's a feeling most of the time, and it's different for everybody. So then that takes me to a place of equity. Are you embedding that in your practices as an organization? Probably not. Or you're going for an equality approach versus an equity approach. So you're not fully meeting the needs of your team. But how do you know the needs of your team if you have not taken the time to get to know them? And so for me as a leader, it is doing the extra things. It's keeping a calendar of birthdays or holidays. It's in my one-to-ones with my team, checking in with them. Hey, how are you doing? I remember you said you went on vacation last week. How was that? Or calling out achievements. It's the time that they're taking to go back to school, to get certifications, to, whatever it is that they're doing. I still want to make sure I always maintain a human touch component of whatever it is that I'm doing, because I want to make sure that they feel valued. And I think in feeling valued, that is ultimately the key to a high performing team. Does your team feel valued? Honestly. And it's something that's so important to me, because oftentimes when I wasn't in leadership, I didn't feel valued. I felt that, oh, here comes Sabrina again. She's the squeaky wheel. She always has something to say about something, and in a sense, it was me trying to do process improvement or be the voice of the team, because other people did not feel that they had the autonomy to speak up. So they would come to me, and I'm like, actually, you know what? That's important, and it does impact me. And then I speak up and I say things. But when I think of that, is making sure that my team also feels empowered to speak up about things as well. and that I'm ready to receive it. I might not like it. Sometimes I don't, but their opinion matters to me. And not only does it matter to me, I take it as actionable intel and move with it so that they know that their voices matter. And that's how they feel included in everyday decisions that are going on within our organization.
And I just want to add one other thing, something as small as asking pronouns. It's so small, but it makes such an impact. And so, me again, I'm y'all see, I'm very much a person about toolbox, like building my toolbox. And that's something else that I keep in, just asking, not assuming, not guessing, and then leading and saying, okay, even in my email, right? I'd make sure that my pronouns are part of my signature, just so that everyone feels comfortable putting their pronouns in their signature blocks if they choose to, but just asking, in very politely, what is your preference when it comes to pronouns? Thank you. And then make sure that you use those proper pronouns when you're addressing.
Even on that same note, name pronunciation, right? We in staffing and recruitment, we're meeting people constantly, and no one's name is difficult. I had a candidate actually submit a video interview, and the first thing that she said in there was, "This is my name. I go by this. I'm sorry, my name is difficult." And the first thing I did when I heard that was email her and say, "Never apologize for your name. Your name is your name. It was given to you for a reason, and it is not difficult. Just tell us how to pronounce it." And folks should respect that, right? Just like pronouns. In terms of making a team feel valued, and in addition to those pieces, sort of going back to the human piece, right? We're people before work. And understanding how folks are showing up in their personal lives is important to me. One of the things that has become a norm for me is making sure that I don't schedule time after one-on-ones, right? Because sometimes those things go over because people have stuff they want to talk about. Sometimes I got stuff I want to talk about. And folks, need to connect. They have things that are on their mind. Something happened yesterday that they want to talk about, they need to vent about. And I'm totally comfortable with that, making that space, right? For folks that work a lot, who value the work that they do, it's kind of hard to disconnect, right? And I know that there are people like that on my teams. And so it's important for me to build that time in so that they can connect personally during the work, because this is also personal for them. Let's see, there was something else I was thinking about a second ago. I wanted to also circle back to what I started with in the last question, which is making sure folks know that they have power, but also advocating for them. I've had experiences where something happened in a meeting with a client or a candidate or something like that, and a member of my team, felt some type of way, like, oh, I felt hurt. I was disappointed that they felt that way. I was angry that this thing happened. And knowing that this isn't not the moment that they need to speak up for themselves. This is the moment I need to speak up for them, and doing that, acknowledging that this is not their time, it's my time, to make sure that they're okay as a human, and make sure that this does not happen again, right? That goes back to the psychological safety, making sure folks feel comfortable and safe doing their work, because if they're not, how are you going to perform, right? I do not perform well when I don't feel safe. And in those moments, that's when I cut clients, right? We can't work together, right? I don't feel comfortable doing this, and I'm not going to do good work because of that. And there's no reason why a member of my team wouldn't feel exactly the same way. So how I would want someone to take up for me and advocate for me is what I do for my team as well.
As a startup leader, what unique challenges have you faced when doing team development, and how have you overcome them? We're going to start at the end.
First of all, money. Let's start there. Those things cost money most of the time, or say, depending on what it is you want to do. So I think of budget, I think of time allocation, because startups are lean and most people have 5 different jobs. So they don't feel like they have the time, and then you lack the buy-in from them and getting budgetary expenses approved. So those are some of the challenges that I have had to deal with. And I think what's been successful for me is linking our company values, our company vision, linking those things to the initiatives that I need to move forward, if I'm going to be honest. And then making that into a business case, because I feel like it's so easy. They're like, oh, well, this isn't making us any money, so why would I pour money into this initiative for my employees? Well, actually, it impacts how they perform, how they show up. Take the time. Yes, it's an expense, but you will see a return on it because employees know when they're not being invested into. So let's not do that as an organization. And I think that's something for me. And because me and my boss is the president and CEO of the company, and we sometimes have conversations and disagreements about that. But it's simply from a place of, well, what's the budget for it? Okay, I don't have the budget for it. And I'm like, okay, let me find a free version of this. Because it doesn't mean that the work doesn't need to be done, but I need to problem solve and put out the fire to figure out how to make it happen. And deliver that to my team because I feel like they need that. They need to know that we are invested in them. And that's something that is extremely important to me. And that's why I have left companies before personally. I'm like, well, there's nothing else for me. You're not investing into me as an individual, or you see the potential and it becomes threatening because you'll think that I'll outgrow you. And if I'm going to be honest, as a leader, I want all of my team to outgrow me. That means that I have done my job, that I have built you up and I have poured into you and invested into you and cultivated those skills out of you for you to move forward. You should lead me. And I will be happy when that does happen because we have forged the connection. And I know that I played a part in that. And that is the why for me.
So I will tell you, I'm in a bit of a different place because we're a tech startup. And honestly, and we're very top heavy. And so for us, it's more of stake and equity in the company. But I will tell you, the way that you really show someone you appreciate them is by putting money in their pockets. So for me, it is, how do we quickly get positioned where I can now truly pay you for what you're worth? And then secondly, because we are all A-type personalities, like their room can get real tight real fast. And so for me, it is making sure that I'm, me again, ready, aim, fire personality, that I have to step back more and just assess, is everyone feeling heard, right? Are some people dominating too much of this conversation? And do I need to call on someone who's being a bit quiet? And so for me, it's just kind of balancing, because we all are, have been at the C-suite level. We, don't psychoanalyze me kind of thing, like stuff that may have worked with a junior person is not necessarily going to work with a very senior person. And so it feels very different, this level of dynamics. And this is the first time that I've played in this space. And so it's just, error and trial, or trial and error. But I will say, for me, I'm very clear that my job is to make sure that I can truly, you could tell people you appreciate them, but I've got to hurry up and put that money in their pockets.
Yeah, 100% agree. The money is key, right? People have to pay bills. I gotta pay bills. You gotta pay bills, right? And that's a given. I think in addition to that, a challenge that we've faced is in actually just building out that team, is the recruitment and the hiring of the right people. Startup is different, right? Going through the norming, the storming, trying to figure out exactly what it is that we're doing, how we're going to do it. Folks paying, clients paying late, things happening, right? Like, startup world is different, and it is not for everyone, right? And it is challenging to determine, okay, should you be here? Do you want to be here? Is this for you? It's for me. I started the company, but are you just playing right now? Like, what's going on? And as someone whose career was built on recruitment, starting the B Suite and having challenges in hiring has been, one, hilarious, two, frustrating. But startup is new for me too, as the boss, right? As the founder. Never been a founder in this seat before, and so this is new. It's different, and it's challenging in a very different way than things have been in the past. But um, we've started asking very different questions to folks now that we have a better grasp and understanding of our company and how we see ourselves now and in the future. We can sort of discern a little bit better who really wants to be here and should be here versus not. Because again, startup is not the space for every person.
Thank you. That was really insightful. Next question will be, how do you ensure that you and your team are continuously getting professional development? And do you have recommendations for the people out there for resources?
Yeah, I will fall on a sword real quick and say I have not done the best job of this in the last year or so. It's something I have had recent conversations with my team about, because I've actually put a little bit too much of an onus on them to figure out what that development's going to look like externally, versus with myself, helping them, navigate that. In the past, I've done things like create 70-20-10 plans. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of one of those, where it's, a part of the work is, on the job, right? Learning. A part of it is reading and navigating some things on your own. And then I think the 20% is like connecting that staff member with someone else who can support skill development. That's been very helpful in the past. I think depending on whatever the line of work is, PD is going to look very different. In our space, one of the things that I believe is most valuable is just spending time with other folks in recruitment and staffing. There are a lot of tips and tricks and things like that in the space that we're in, that you can only get from those one-on-one conversations, those small group conversations. So being able to go to events like this one, or conferences, or one-day virtual events, and ask questions and network, with other folks is really valuable for learning those bits and pieces.
Thank you. For me, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to be in the military. What that showed me, especially my time in Iraq, that if we can find time in a wartime situation, right, to train, there is no excuse in a civilian environment where you're not finding being intentional in investing in developing your team. And so anytime I've gone into an organization where they pride themselves on, oh, we're just so busy and we're doing this and we're doing that, we don't have time. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have time to develop? At the end of the day, if the time and money, because from hiring, it takes money to hire, right? There's a level of investment when you hire. So if you want to retain the talent that you have to invest in them. And also, if I know that I don't have anywhere else for you to go in my organization, one of the ways that I'm able to retain you, eventually you're going to leave me, right? If I can't help you grow. But a way that I can prolong your time with me and so that the company can benefit from your gifts is pouring into you and saying, listen, I'm intentional in your development. And whether you stay with us or you go, guess what? What I'm investing in you, you're going to be able to take with you wherever you go. Right. And so being intentional in developing the teams, that's been really important for me. When I look at even my mentees, so I look at my first level teams, and I would expect them to also do this with their teams and my mentees as well. I said, okay, let's take the current job description, right? Now, where do you want to go? What is the next job? Okay, let's pull that job description. And I would create an Excel sheet that would list out the qualifications that they currently have versus the qualifications to where they want to go. and then really show like, okay, you've got this, 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 this. Here are the areas that you don't have. Now let's develop a plan around that so that we can make sure that you're getting exposure so that these skill sets you now say that you have and you're ready for this next move. And part of that would be perhaps I could be in a meeting and they say, oh, we need, I don't have any more headcount, but I need someone who can do this. Then I would raise my hand and say, actually, I know someone in this other area that would be great for this and they would have the bandwidth. And then I'd go back to that person and say, look, I know you're probably going to have to put in extra hours, but guess what? You said you wanted to get promoted. You said that so add this to your, figure it out, go to this person and raise your hand for this job. And so for me, when you're pouring into people, it's one thing, but you have to help them to see the benefits. And by just putting up 2 job descriptions and then connecting those dots, for me, it's made it really clear to the people that what I was investing with them, it wasn't just, read a book and tell me what you learned about the book. Like they really could see and apply it to furthering their career.
I love a good individual development plan. Yes. So that's actually something that I like to utilize myself. I think it helps structure the conversation, right? Because when you ask somebody, well, what do you want to do? And you're like, well, I'm here working. So, but with an IDP and building out the time, and I feel like that's probably the biggest thing as a leader is incorporating that time. Like you set specific protected time aside with your team members to figure out, what are you doing? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And you create a plan together because there is accountability on my part as a leader. As you said, when those opportunities present itself, I'm plugging you in because I know what you want to do. And I'm not looking at it because it's easy to look at, oh, well, that's going to take time away, or it could potentially impact how you're delivering on this, or, you have to check your own bias and fears about that as a leader. And then you put them in those positions. In doing that, you earn so much respect from your team because it shows that you're not afraid of their growth. Even if that means that one day, at one point in time, they outgrow you. And I also, so in my field in organizational development and human resources and DEI, there's so many different things. There are workshops, there are coaches, you can partner with them to learn more. I don't feel like I need to know everything, but the things that I do know, I've taken the time to invest in them. And I want to give my team the opportunity to do that too and collectively learn together sometimes. Like right now, I'm working on a project for us to read DEI Deconstructed together and then talk about it so it can facilitate conversations. Because if we're going to be honest, everyone is in different places with their journey with DEI, but being able to sit down and talk about it. So what did this mean to you from your identities, the intersectionality of yours, and what does that mean for me? And that's also opening up and allowing another level of authenticity, and I feel also playing off of psychological safety. But it's a development opportunity. And I think as a leader, it's important to recognize those opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. How do you approach giving and receiving feedback? I know you just talked about IDPs, but I would like to hear a little bit more about that, especially how you structure the conversations around like making sure that there are tangible outcomes to the conversation, not just telling them what they're doing wrong. So can you speak more to that?
Feedback is actually one of my favorite things to teach about, if I'm going to be honest. And it's because I feel like people can try to weaponize feedback and to take it to where it's only and always constructive, right? But the purpose of feedback is development. So everything that I'm ever saying to you in the reference of feedback, it's to develop you as a person. I'm not antagonizing or talking about your identities. I'm not talking about you as a person. I'm talking about a task that you did or a skill that you need to improve on or something that you showed me that was great and I want you to keep continuing to do it. But it's primarily and only focused on your development. I'm not personalizing it. And by doing that and teaching folks how to do that, and I like to teach it in a way where it's action and the impact of the action and the outcome of it versus, well, you did this to me or you did this and I didn't like it. Okay, What am I supposed to do with that information? You're not telling me how to do it better. You're not telling me exactly what I did that was wrong. And you're not telling me in a way where most people will receive that. Because if you just come at someone and say, oh, I hate that. That was terrible. That causes folks to shut down. And I want you to hear what I'm saying because it's coming from a place of development. So it's important as to how you structure it and when you give it, and as a leader, taking the time to ask your team, how do you like to receive feedback? Because I don't give me feedback in front of everybody. Pull me to the side, you know? But you have to take the time to know that, to ask that. And then volunteer as a leader. I'm open and receptive to feedback too. We build a feedback culture. And that is also how I feel you adapt the power dynamics, because you have the authority to give me feedback, just like I do as well.
I love that. I always tell people that feedback is a gift, right? And here's the thing. If I give you a gift and I spend my time finding that perfect gift and I give to you and you just take it and throw it in the trash, I'm probably not going to go shopping for you anymore. And so for me, you know, I have to be at a place where I feel that I can comfortably give you feedback and that you can receive it. Like that just has to be. We can't coexist if that doesn't exist because no one's perfect. I love what you were talking about, in terms from the IDP process. And for me, if you get to certain levels, it becomes less of what you did and more of how you did it. Right. And when you get into those conversations, they're more difficult. What I loved, earlier on when I was, managing more at a junior level, those tasks were typically associated with, they were easily measurable, right? They were tied to some KPI, key performance index. When you get to those higher levels, it becomes more subjective. And so it goes back to what we all talked about earlier, team dynamics and trust. If I've not built that trust with you as a leader and I'm giving you feedback, if you don't want to receive this gift I'm giving you, it's easily to say like, oh, she's just hating on me. Oh, it's every other thing outside of let me just sit with it. And so for me, when I know I'm giving hard feedback, if it's really tough feedback, I tell that person to clear their calendar for the rest of the day because I want them to go home or go wherever, take a walk and just sit with it. And I'll tell them it's not for you to reply. I'm going to share what I see, right? And also the impact that it's having on those around you. And if you know this isn't you, but this is the impact, you've got to figure out how to change that dynamic because this is how people see you. It doesn't have to be you, but this is how people see you. And if you don't like that, then guess what? Only you can change that. And so for me, one thing that I like to do is give people space to process. So it's one thing, when it comes to the feedback and knowing how people like to receive feedback. If you've ever gotten hit, just punched in the gut, right? You know how that feels. And it's real hard for you to walk out of that office and be like, cheerio, right? You're like, oh, my soul, like I need to breathe. People are people, they're human, right? They're not mean to an end. Give people space to process it and don't demand a reaction because the reaction you get 9 times out of 10, it's an emotional response and it isn't going to be good. You're basically asking a person to like mess up your relationship. So give people space to sit with it and just say, hey, take time. We don't even talk about it tomorrow. Let's talk about it 24 or 48 hours. Like sit with it. And then when you're ready, like really let's talk about it. And so for me, that's a big thing is when and it goes back to another thing that you said about giving feedback. I truly believe in praising in public and criticizing in privacy. And I ask my teams to do the same thing. I don't care how jacked up a person could be, do not put them on Front Street in front of others, right? Because we're all people. And so if you have an issue, pull them aside and address that. So I'm going to pause that because I could talk on that all day. Feedback, it's critical.
I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and say that feedback starts with your ability to communicate, period. If you are an ineffective communicator, you shouldn't be giving anybody any feedback, right? You need to learn that part first. And combine that with some emotional intelligence, right? If you are lacking emotional intelligence, you are going to do things like give people really difficult feedback at 8 o'clock in the morning and tell them to go get to work. No, it's not going to work that way, right? So those are two skills that if you find yourself as a leader, as a manager, as a supervisor, struggling with giving people feedback, I'm going to tell you to go look in the mirror and figure out, am I an effective communicator or not? Do I have emotional intelligence or not? And if those answers are no, then work on that before you start giving people feedback.
Thank you. Do we have any audience questions?
Is there like a procedure for asking questions? Okay, I'll stand. Hi, I'm Janelle Taylor. I have a question. I guess it's for everyone, but I'm really intrigued about your military background. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the fact that the military is currently seeing some of the worst recruitment and retention in history, and so I kind of would like to hear any of your ideas about how your experience and witnessing what's going on, how your experience has led to you improving recruitment and retention in your own business, and things that you feel are scalable in other areas.
All right, I'll start it off. All right, no, it's okay. I would say at the end of the day, people don't quit companies, they quit bosses. And so when it comes to retention, if I'm noticing, for instance, I would run districts, which means there's several stores, and I can see the numbers. Every week I can see my retention numbers. And it is a clear indicator when you have leadership problems in a building because you just see that revolving door. And here's the thing, you're costing me money because every time someone leaves, I got to bring someone else in and we've got to train them. And there's that period where they're not productive. And if you anger them before the 90 days, like it's just going. And so for me, when I see that happening, I will go into those particular stores and I would do what basically I'll call them like coffee time with Tracy. And we would just, I'd come in with Dunkin' Donuts, real unassuming, some donuts, some coffee. I was like, let's just talk. And so I'm not asking direct questions like, is the general manager a jerk? Right? I'm just asking just anecdotal questions that'll help me kind of get around. And I'm trying to assess the effectiveness of communication. Are people getting their lunch breaks? Are people, I'll go into the computer and see when people are putting in time off requests. Are you quickly giving them responses? And so simple things like I'll open up the microwave and see if the microwave is clean. I know you care about your people. If the microwave is dirty, you want your folks at the heat their lunch up in a nasty microwave. So there are small things like that that I would look to give me evidence of, do I have a people leader in that building? And so retention, it comes back to what we spoke about. Is this an inclusive environment, right? And even if it's inclusive, it could be inclusive in one way, right? But when it comes to my ideas and if I feel like I'm counted and my thoughts matter to an organization. Are you really giving voice to people? Okay, just because you let somebody come to work, with their hair all over their heads and, tatted up or doing whatever their thing is, you can be like, well, we're inclusive. Look how this person look how they look. Okay, but when you sit down, when they speak up, are you building off of their ideas, right? And even if they're just not hitting the mark, how do you steer it to where they do hit the mark? And so you can get so busy and it will go back to, if an environment is not where I feel safe, right? We spoke about that. If I don't feel included and valued, and I don't feel like I can bring my authentic self, people are just not okay with that anymore. Like our parents, our grandparents were okay. we're not okay, right? The generations underneath us are not okay. And so corporations, big entities like the Army, they really have to rethink on how they show up to be able to retain talent. Did that answer your question? No, it didn't. What part? What? Big chair speak.
Essentially, I was just, I'm always curious to hear the perspective of someone who's gone through the military, given that it's such a unique, like, hierarchical system.
Right.
And it's kind of like set in stone how you can advance. There's like negative press about, people feeling hurt, people feeling that's inclusive, and just how those experiences, given that you said that it was a positive experience for you, what you've taken from that and have been able to implement in your business. Like, I guess I'm really interested in organizational transformation, and I think that the military and healthcare. So like the VA, for example, give really unique opportunities to kind of look at systems that have more of an equity focus. They're still struggling, but like they have like more like data on things that have worked and haven't worked. So I was just curious if you had any like specific things that were good in the military that you brought over, and likewise things that for sure you have to change.
So I would say specifically in the military, what the military is great at is developing talent, right? And so that's something that's that piece where when I came on the civilian side, it felt optional. In the military, it was mandatory, right? That training piece. Also in the military, because if you're in charge, you're at times you put on the hat of a marital counselor. You're putting on all these different. You are really dealing with the whole soldier, whereas I'm only dealing with you 9 to 5 when you're here, and that's a very different approach in terms of how you lead. But while all those things are great, to your point, the military is still very rigid in certain ways, and if people aren't willing to conform to that, you're seeing a spin out. Now, I've been out of the military since 2009. I'm actually going to put someone on the spot. I am Betty. So my friend Betty literally just retired last month, Lieutenant Colonel retired. Betty, can you maybe speak a bit more specifically on like the military and the struggles with retention? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think, Tracy hit it on the nail with her first comments about, what we're seeing in the military is a institution that's not ready to transform. And we have to realize that every generation is different. How my parents were and the things that they're willing to accept isn't necessarily the things I'm willing to accept. So when we're trying to attract millennials and Gen Z, they have different expectations. And so as an organization, as a military, we have to be more flexible, be more willing to adjust our rules. And sometimes we think, well, we don't have to adjust our rule, they have to adjust to us. But it's very different. These are new generations, these are different expectations for each generation. And as leaders in the corporate world, you lead people differently based on where they are. You still have to meet them where they are, whether they are a baby boomer, whether they are Gen X, whether they're a Gen Z, whether they're millennial. Each of those individuals have different values, different expectations, and those things have to be adjusted. And as an organization, yeah, you don't want to change your own values as an organization, but how you meet those people and how you attract those people, how you retain those people are important, and we have to adjust how we do that. And that's what the military is learning right now. And then also you have to realize this is a newer generation that have seen war. When Tracy and we were in college when September 11 happened. And so that was new for us. We didn't know what to expect. And now we have a new generation that has spent 20 plus years of war. And so they have different expectations of what they want for their lives, and they may not be attracted to that. And I think we saw that decline after Vietnam. After Vietnam happened, there was a huge lag. The military experienced the same thing. We had to adjust and conform. There were people who were not attracted to the military, and then it slowly saw an incline. And so we're just in that lull. I think it gets over sensationalized right now, but it's just that lull of, American values are changing, a new generation of people, a new generation, new expectations, and we have to just adjust to what's happening in society.
I know it's a complex question. I think that like the offer is a very interesting like observational experiment of sorts that's actively happening. That is probably the biggest study that you could have to look at how you craft high performing teams, how you get someone young, how you train them up, how you get them to want to stay, how they leave that organization and add to whatever network they become a part of. So thank you.
No, that was a beautiful question. And I will tell you too, what keeps people committed, there has to be a shared North Star in like a deep belief. Like I have to really believe in the mission, so that no matter all this other ankle biter or big things or ankle biter things that are happening around me, I'm going to stay committed because I'm committed to an idea that's bigger than any one person. And so when you're in the military and you're committed to serving your country, well, when your country starts doing things that you don't agree with, it changes and can shake a bit of some of that dynamic. And so there's very
Yeah, there was no benefit to your time. You don't have the healthcare, you don't have the family support,
right.
etc.
Or you come back and say, I've given so much, and I come back to the civilian society, and you're like, but this country doesn't love me back. And that's something that we've seen with a lot of Black officers. And, so we both graduated from West Point, and we're still very much active with the current cadets in the Black alumni. And the biggest thing is that you go and you fight for a country and you risk, right? People go up signing knowing that I may die. But you don't sign up thinking like I may lose a limb. What does my life look like now that I don't have these limbs, or I can't hear, I can't see, and then you're still dealing with the crap, right? And so it's hard to give up and sacrifice so much for a country that doesn't necessarily love you back in that same way. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit to something that's pretty similar, which is education. I don't know if y'all know, but people aren't teaching anymore, right? There has been a shortage of teachers for a very long time, and COVID hitting impacted that even more. And my background started in education. I was a high school teacher for a hot sec before I shifted gears. But I stayed in schools for a while in recruitment, and that stuff was hard, right? Folks don't want to be in that space anymore, right? Things are different. The way we feel about showing up as educators is different now than it's ever, more different now than it's ever been. And that recruitment is hard. The retention is even harder. Every year since COVID, droves of folks have left the education space. Folks that look like this panel, they are not teaching in schools right now, right? And it's in part because we aren't conforming the workspace for teachers in a way that works for them, right? There is a lack of flexibility that folks have in corporate jobs and small businesses as contractors that we aren't applying to other spaces, education being one of the main ones that comes to mind, right? You don't have to teach all day to still be a teacher, right? So why are we forcing people to conform to these boundaries and these norms that have existed for the last 100 years? It's clearly not working, right? And that applies to lots of spaces. We have to start thinking about how to set up workplaces for people in a way that it works today in 2023 and in a way that it's going to work in 2025, right? And constantly be thinking about those changes because they have to constantly be happening, right? Our environment is shifting way more quickly than it's ever shifted before. Obviously, we can accredit a lot of that to technology. As a millennial myself, like I grew up in technology, right? I grew up both in a rotary phone and also Nokia, right? I had a singular. I played Snake, like it was a thing, right? But I also was at my grandma's house trying to dial, 7 digits. Yes, we had 7-digit phone numbers back in the day for anybody that doesn't know that, right? but we have to start transforming workplaces to make it work for people, right? Because it does not work anymore. Whether that's flexible hours, right? Whether it's contract work, maternity and paternal leave, right? Things have to shift. We have to provide different benefits for folks, right? The basic healthcare and dental is not gonna cut it. I don't know if y'all know anything about dental insurance, but you can talk to me after this about how that's a scam. But anyway, right, we have to do things differently. That applies, I believe, both to the military, to education, to nonprofits, to for-profit, right? We have to think about things differently. And it starts with the folks who are at the top because we see it, we're going through it, and we're supporting our teams, and we're hearing the things that they're telling us and going, girl. Oh, wow, that's crazy, right? And we're not doing anything about it, and we have to.
Give it up for our beautiful panel. Thank all of you for just everything. That was just so many gems in there. So really quick, I want to transition us to the next steps of things. If you are in the pitch competition, you'll be going to room 124. If you want to stay here and listen to Tracy's masterclass, that'll be happening immediately. And
wait, I'm sorry. Point of clarity. The pitch competition is going live at 3. If you are participating in the pitch competition, do me a favor, meet me in 124. We'll have a really quick conversation. Cool beans? Thank you, folk. Folk at home, how y'all doing? Isn't that weird? They can't talk back, but they can hear us. It's up there.
as we all point.